cooking around the world today. In 25 minutes, we're going to go in Ireland, doing an Irish stew. After the first course, we're going to do an avocado sauce, actually with a crab meat cake from the southern part of the United States. We're going to go to Mexico with more avocado and a guacamole, and finally we'll finish in Portugal with fig stuffed with almond, as they do in Portugal. I like to cook that type of mixture, and I think sometimes it makes very interesting menu to work it out together. Now we're going to start with the lamb stew, and as you see here, I have a piece of lamb with a lot of fat on top that I'm going to remove. This is from the back leg of the lamb. You can use the shoulder, but the back leg is going to be much trimmer than the front shoulder, you know. This is actually the large muscle of the back leg, what we call the top round. You know, it's a nice piece of meat that you can roast with, as well as do a stew with it, you know. But notice that I'm moving all of the fat out of it, or as much as the surface of the fat, and that's very important in the type of cooking that we do, and you really don't need it to be that rich anyway. Now we are relatively doing small portion of meat here because we're doing a lot of vegetable with it. I like to extend the meat with a lot of vegetable. See, there is not real special technique to remove the fat. Just look at it, and in a large muscle like this, the fat is really in the surface of the meat, so you just cut it off. Actually, I will trim it exactly in the same way if I wanted to roast it. I could make some hole and put garlic in it in the oven. That'd be great. For our stew here, we are cutting it. And when you cut the meat, you know, if you start cutting somewhere, you will see that the meat usually separates by itself because there is a series of muscle, as you can see here. And between those muscles, you're going to have pieces of fat or sinew that you may want to remove. Actually, the part of the meat that I am cutting now, that part here, it's part of the bottom round also. You know, all of those are part of the back leg. I like to do the stew in fairly large pieces like this because I feel that when you do them in small pieces, by the time they cook, they reduce again by like half or 2/3, and people think that you're using some type of small trimming, you know, or scrap of meat. So I like a large piece in my stew. Again, trimming it good this way. This is spring lamb, so-called, you know, which indicate an animal between about 6 to 10 months old. This is a domestic lamb, you know. I can see at the color of it, the smell of it, it's pale in color, it has a nice smell, as opposed to a New Zealand or Australian lamb, which we tend to be stronger in taste, you know. So what we are going to do is to put this in there. And we go now to our vegetable. This is a lamb stew, but it is poached with liquid and vegetable rather than fried or sauté. And the vegetable that we have, as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of different vegetables. And what we do with it, I have carrot, celery, potato. Now you take your potato like that, you peel them, cut them into large pieces. Each of those you cut them into chunks. And now those chunks of potato, you trim them, as I have done here already. What you're trying to do is to do like a little round potato there. I have some cooked already for you. I'm going to go through the process explaining to you. You see this way, that's what I have here. Now we keep the trimming as well as the potato. We do a little bit the same thing with the celery, you know. You have celery here, so you cut your celery into pieces like this, into stick. And the trimming, if you have pieces which are a bit off, or the end, for example, this and all this, all that you put in your trimming, so you don't lose anything. Now, the trimming that I have here of your potato, I have some onion, I have garlic, I have thyme, I have bay leaf, and the celery. All of that goes into, well, I don't need all of those, but this, a couple of bay leaf in there, and basically all of the rest of it is going to go in there. The garlic, the onion, celery pieces, and trimming of potato. That's it. All of that is going to be used as a thickening agent in the stock later on. So, the next thing that we do is to cook those vegetables. That is the nice piece of celery. I put those potatoes in like 2-3 cups of water, no salt, nothing. You boil them for about 15-20 minutes until they are just about tender, slightly underdone. You remove the potato with a slotted spoon, and you put your celery and your carrot, which is what I have now. So the celery and the carrot, I am going to strain them. You can use the lid like that. I need the juice of the vegetable there. You see what I'm doing actually? I'm not losing anything. All of the vitamin, all of the taste, all of the, you know, the fiber and all that you may have in the water, you use it in your stew. This is what you start cooking. That will go back into the stew later on, and those trimmings will be pushed through a food mill to thicken the sauce. So that can go on the side. Now, in addition to this, here I need a bit more seasoning, and the seasoning that I have is Worcestershire sauce, a little bit of salt, pepper, freshly ground pepper. That's it. Put a lid on top of that. Bring that to a boil. And after it boils, this should cook for about 45 minutes. And that would be just about right time at which we'll remove the meat and strain the whole mixture to create a sauce. And while this is cooking, we're going to move to the second recipe, which today is a crab meat cake. Crab meat cake in the style of the southern state. And I have here everything that I need for my crab meat cake. Now, you may have seen on the market in the last few years that imitation crab meat, which is called surimi. And the surimi actually is a very old Japanese technique of making a type of patty or different type of shellfish out of mostly fish. This mostly is made with pollock and cod. Those are very abundant fish with which they make those things. To call it surimi of crab, for example, they have to have approximately 25% of the crab itself in it, and sometimes even the shell of the crab is pulverized in it to do that. So this has less cholesterol than regular crab, and if you're interested in this, then you may consider that it is good to do it this way. What I have here is regular crab. So this is the regular crab meat, little pieces that you can buy this way, the meat. And into this, we have some chives and some fresh, some thyme leaf and chive, a little bit of mayonnaise in there that we put to bind it together, a dash of pepper in it, actually quite a lot of pepper. I like it nice and peppery. And I'll mix that first. See, I have just enough binding agent to make that crab all together, but I don't have to have much anything else because I want it as much crab as possible. Finally, at the end, I put a bit of fresh breadcrumb. I have about 1 slice of bread here, which is put in the food processor and transformed into breadcrumb. You know, I put my pot to cook that with it. Just mold it. You don't want to work your bread too much because you want it to be nice and tender. You know, if you work your bread too much into it, you end up with a mess. It gets too gooey, you know, and elastic. And I would like to have it this way. So here, you know, you press it together. We'll serve 1 crab like that per person. They are barely holding together, and that's exactly what you want. So we put a little bit of peanut oil in there to saute this. And this we'll have to saute a couple of minutes on each side. I mean, we have enough for 4 crab here. Maybe I'll do 3 crab that I'm going to put gently in there to start frying. They will cook, as I say, approximately 3 minutes on each side, you know. And set. And while the crab is cooking, we are going to do a sauce for it. And the sauce is going to be made with avocado. Now, of course, if you're on a diet or if you want to reduce your calorie intake, maybe you should omit the sauce, you know, or maybe avoid the avocado in the sauce, because the avocado is fairly caloric. I mean, it is good, it has fiber, but it is caloric also. In any case, here we are going to do the little avocado sauce. Those are small, about 5-ounce avocado, and the idea is to cut them this way, all around. Then you can twist your avocado, and to remove the pit, just bang it with your knife. You can twist, and this will come out of it. And what I do now, I do it gently in your hand with the point of a knife. I will cut this about 1/4 of an inch. This is very tender, you know, so you don't have to worry too much about it. And across, don't go through it, because you would want to cut your finger. If you're afraid, put a towel underneath, you know. I do the same thing with the second one. Across again. And now all I have to do is to take a spoon and dish this in there. It's already all cut into dice, you see. I have maybe a bit too much here. That will be enough. I have some tomato with it. Those tomatoes I dipped in boiling water, so now I can cut it in half. Press the seed out of it. We're going to chop the tomato to add it to our sauce. Chop coarsely, and of course that sauce is very good with a poached fish, for example. Goes very well with it. Maybe that amount is enough. We'll put that right with the avocado. And now it's about time for me to turn my cake. See, they are nice and brown on the other side. They take about 2-3 minutes here. And with this red wine vinegar, quite a lot of red wine vinegar I put in it, maybe a dash of salt, a bit of peanut oil. I like peanut oil in this. You know, in this you mix it and your sauce is done. Just have to dish it on your plate and serve your crab meat cake with it. Now with the rest of the avocado, I have another one here. I can show you a little bit how we do the guacamole, you know. And it's very simple to make and quite delicious. What you do, you just dish and be sure that your avocado is ripe, you know. You could cut it the same way that I did the other. Again, and now you crush it with a fork. This way. I like it very coarse like this, you know. And into this, with my avocado, I have here a lot of seasoning. Can put a bit of tomato also in it for color. Here I have. And on top of this, red onion, a bit of jalapeno peppers, a bit of garlic, some chopped scallion, lime juice, and that's about it. You put it together, salt, a bit of salt with it, and you have a nice avocado. They always say to leave the pit of the avocado in the mixture like this, you know, if you want to keep it for a while to prevent discoloration. Now, what do you eat with your guacamole? You eat that with the chip made with the tortilla here. And I have different type of tortilla, the flour tortilla, whole wheat tortilla, and here I have corn tortilla. Usually they are deep fried. For us to cut down on the fat a little bit, all I do is to take a brush and I brush the tortilla with a little bit of oil on each side, cut it into wedge and put it in the oven. 7-8 minutes on each side. It brown nicely, and I don't have too much fat in it. So that's a nice way of doing it. Your avocado can be served in something like that. It looks good. This is a great first course, or rather snack, you know, that you can serve this way. And I think now we are about ready to serve the cake. So I want to put a little bit of the avocado sauce directly on the plate here with the tomato. And you would want to serve that, put them around. and your crab meat cake right in the center of it. And as I say, you know, again, if you want to cut down, then you may want to omit the avocado sauce. Just simply a delicious dish. You know, people don't realize how important equipment is, you know. If you want to become a good cook, invest some money and buy the best equipment on the market. You know, it does make a big difference. I have different type of metal here. Copper, especially copper, lined up with stainless steel is the best. It has 3 times, triple the amount of heat transfer than the second one, which is aluminum here. Now this is a anodized aluminum. There is a coating on top of it which eventually disappeared. This is plain stainless steel. If the stainless steel is too thin, the heat transfer goes right through, and on the other side you have a black spot. No diffusion throughout the metal. In decreasing order, you have the thick cast iron. You kind of become emotionally attached to those. You know, I have some, and those are good too, but they tend to discolorate the food and so forth. And here I have enamel steel. That's quite good too, but the heat transfer is not as good as you will have with the copper. And finally, what is used a great deal today is the non-stick pan. This is a regular non-stick pan, which eventually wear off. And this is a permanent non-stick, which is guaranteed for years. If you get into baking now, then you use aluminum. Aluminum will give you the best heat transfer and the nicest browning, you know, on your cake. It's going to be nicer than steel or the large tin, you know. And so make yourself a favor, buy good equipment. And now I better go back to my stew and know where it's cooked. We have that lamb stew here, which has been cooking for 45 minutes. What you want to do with it now is to remove the meat that I have here, which is about cooked now. The rest of the vegetable, remember, we are going to put it directly into the food mill, you know, and this is why you use a food mill. A food processor will work up to a certain extent, but remember that here I have bay leaf, for example, thyme. I may have, you know, clove. Sometimes I leave the shell of the clove of garlic in it. And then you put it in the food mill, which is better, with the rest of the liquid. Remember that that liquid was the liquid of our vegetable that we did. So we have all of the taste and nutrient into this. So that goes into our food mill. You want to clean it up pretty good because you want to put back the meat into it. There. Back on your stove, and your meat back into it. And now we want to strain this. Make a puree, you know, so actually you're using those streaming as thickening agent, you know, and it's a technique which sometimes, I mean, this is an Irish lamb stew. We used to do that recipe in Paris when I worked there. And, but the recipe, or the technique rather, sometimes people call it a coulis, you know, when you have like a raspberry and you do a puree with the raspberry and use the flesh of the raspberry as a thickening agent, you see, that you have in there now. And it's nice and rich. Remember, all of our vegetables which were there, we put them now down into the stew. And you see, you have about the right amount of liquid and so forth. Put back the lid on top of it. And you want to bring that to a boil and boil that for like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes now, so that the whole thing simmers together. And while it's cooking again, we are going to do our dessert. And for that, we are moving up to Portugal, you know, where they do that recipe that I had last year with my wife. I really loved it. And I decided to do it, and we do it at home very often now. It's quite easy to do. We have those dry fig here and almond. And what you do, you cut the fig in like a flower, you know, in fourths like this, you know? And you press it. You can press it on a cookie sheet directly like that. We're doing a sandwich, actually, with 2 figs, you know? So one this way. After you press it, turn it back on the other side. You do the same thing with the second fig. Or what you should do there, those are mission fig, you know? Try to get the largest one you can, you know? It's better. Again, this one I press it so that it makes it a bit flatter. And in the middle of the corner, at the corner here, we're putting 4 almonds. You know, that you put there. Those almonds are not roasted, you know, just plain almond this way. Place that on top of it and press it into a sandwich now. And that goes into the oven. I think there in Portugal, the little farmer put it in the sun, you know, to dry. But there it's good in the oven because the almond will roast and it will take 20, 25 minutes in the oven. When we were in Portugal, at the market, people had big bag of that they sold and it was terrific. I have some which are cooked right here. And as you can see, they dry out now. You can do that, do them ahead. The kid absolutely adore those things, you know. So you do them, it's very high fiber. The nuts are good for you, so it's a terrific kind of snack dessert. And now we're going to finish our stew, which has been reboiling a little bit. So a bit of parsley on top of it. And the stew, that type of meal, you know, is served in a large container like that. I like to serve it this way, you know. So I can dish it out or actually pour the whole thing into a large type of a stew terrine. Actually, you know, I like the way it falls down very often in a natural way like this, you know, without fussing around too much with it. I think there is too much fussing around with food now. It falls in a natural way. You cover that with a little bit of herb, that's parsley. You know, you can use whatever you want. And here, from Portugal, we are back into Ireland. And now we have finished our tour culinaire around the world. And it's time to enjoy the food. I'm bringing here the Irish lamb stew that we had and that we are going to enjoy. And of course, to recap the whole menu, we have here the guacamole. Remember, in our guacamole, we put some cilantro, which is also called coriander, that I may have forgotten to tell you. And I have those chips that I made with a little bit of brushing oil on top to avoid. Now, the whole meal itself is under 900 calories. And of course, if you want to omit the sauce for the first course there, you're going to lower a great deal again your calorie intake through the fat that we have here. That little crab cake from southern United States is one of my favorite. And as I say here, not only is it done with avocado, but the tomato. If you want omit the avocado, just leave the tomato and maybe a little bit of green, and it'll be just as good. Be terrific. With that, we have again, our lamb stew with a great amount of fiber because we have so much vegetable in it, so we can lower the proportion of meat to have. It's very fresh and nice. We have used not only the trimming for the sauce, but the turned vegetable as a garnish, and it's a great way of doing it. You can also do your stew ahead, so that's very nice, you know. You're always looking to have some dish that can be prepared ahead and reheated when the guests come or when the family arrive, you know, so that's great. And we have a salad with it. I always love to have a salad. Again, more fiber in your menu. And finally, those fig that I call fig Villamora, because that little town in the south part of Portugal, I was in vacation with my wife. That's where we enjoy those fig from at the market, hanging it in little bag. I mean, you had the farmer which would brought it for us, and we really enjoy them so much that we decide to duplicate them for you. Well, with this, we have an interesting wine. Actually, this is a wine from Chile, another part of the world. There is some great wine in Chile now, especially in the red. Those are very fruity, well-built wines, so you can enjoy those. They are quite inexpensive wine. I hope you're going to do our menu for today. I enjoy making it for you. Happy cooking!